Hey, I'm Jay Kumar, the Bass Blaster, and this is your Seafoam Top 5 of the Week in Bass Fishing. Number 1.
Man, that's heavy. Osmium heavy.
Well, I don't know what osmium is, but I know that the heaviest dude at the MLF Heavy Hitters Tournament was Jordan Lee. He won it on the Kissimmee chain in Florida by just 4 pounds, which is less than 1 Florida bite, over Keith Off the Grid Poche. Now, you probably know that starting this year, Jordan is back on the Bassmaster Elite Series, but he qualified for this Heavy Hitters Tournament last year on the MLF Bass Pro Tour. Now, Heavy Hitters is a cool format where the minimum scoreable weight is pretty stout. It was actually 3 pounds on the last day. And they have huge bonuses for big fish. So it's all about looking for big fish areas and finding big fish with big fish baits. Now, Jordan's big fish bait was a frog, or specifically 3 different colors of the newish Berkley Swamp Lord frog. Now, Swamp Lord is a little bigger and softer than your average frog, and a little more on that in a minute. Now, one of the keys Jordan said was bombing long casts into those mats or on top of those mats and not going in to get a fish once it was hooked. Little groups of fish were concentrated in these smaller areas inside these huge mats, and he said if you went and got the fish, you would only catch 1 out of that area instead of getting maybe 2, 3, 4 bites. He hauled those bad boys all the way back to the boat like he was working out for the Bassin Special Forces. Now, that tournament ended up being like the world's best commercial for those Abu Garcia J. Lee or his signature Jordan Lee rods. Now, those rods are nowhere near the best rods that Abu makes, but are very good for the price, which I say owning a few. They're a crazy good value for the money, and Jay Lee showed the Bassin world why that is. Now, I have to mention that Jordan won the exact same event on the exact same chain of lakes 3 years ago. And I have to point out that it was yet another no entry fee tournament win for him, one of many over the years. That list includes the Bassmaster College Championship, the MLF Red Crest Championship, and oh yeah, 2 Bassmaster Classic wins.
Jordan Lee back-to-back Geico Bassmaster Classic champion.
Now, I asked him what's up with that, and he said,
"Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women."
Watch out for Conan Lee. Number 2. The Swamp Lord. That thing and this guy, Big Fish Bobby Lane, aka the Swamp Lord, and the Berkley Science folks all got together and made this Swamp Lord frog. That bait showed out at MLF Heavy Hitters, and not just with Jordan Lee. Keith Poche finished 2nd with it, and Brandon Coulter had a crazy day with it and finished 5th with it in the tournament. Now, is that a coinky-dink? Or is that because of the frog? I called Bobby Lane about it, and he gave a full rundown about that frog, which you can read at bassblaster.rocks, but here are the key points. It took 3 years to get it right. Custom designed Berkley Fusion 19 hooks are the key, Bobby says. It has a very soft body for better crushability by the fish, but it's still durable. The leg material is thinner, so it looks more alive in the water. And it's a little bigger and heavier than most frogs. Add those deals up and you have a frog that makes more of an impression on cheesy mats and apparently has a real good hookup ratio. Watch out for the Swamp Lord, man. Froggy went a-courtin', he did ride.
Froggy went a-courtin', he did ride, Crambo.
Crambone? Is that what he's saying? Crambone? Anyhow, Jordan Lee has frogged many a mat on Guntersville in his home state of Alabama, and he said he felt right at home when he saw those mats on the Kissimmee chain. Now here's some frogging juice from him that was in the Bass Blaster email. All right, I'm quoting Jordan now. "The final day I wasn't getting bit anymore and really had to slow it down. I pulled it, waited a second or two, maybe even longer, then pulled it again. A lot of times on Guntersville, that's how we fish it really slow, so the fish have time to see it and react to it. If they've seen a lot of frogs, Most people are fishing it really fast. Guilty, me too. All right, next one. I took out the skirt and added some jig rattles in one of my frogs, which made a lot more noise. I caught quite a few fish on it throughout the week, mixing it in. I pulled the skirt out, added a little super glue. Those jig rattles I had will fit pretty much right into it. A pretty cool little Guntersville type trick. All right, over that matted grass, I typically cut down the tails anyways. I want a smaller profile where the fish don't blow up on the tails or grab the tails. Makes sense. And last but not least, it looks pretty crazy when you're just horsing them to the boat, but if you choose to go in and get those fish, you will mess up an area. Where you would catch 3 to 5 fish, if you go in and get a fish, you're only getting that one. I've drug out a lot of fish at Guntersville over the years, just like that. There you go, from a master of frogging cheesy mats. And here's one more tip.
All my friends know the low rider.
Gotta have a low rider on those mats, man. Number 4. Kevin Van Dam, the greatest bass fisherman of all time, is done. Again? Or is he? He retired last year, but then he fished the MLF Red Crest Championship in March and just got done fishing the MLF Heavy Hitters. A typical KVD, he was in the hunt to win at Heavy Hitters and ended up with a walk-off $100,000 for big fish on the last day.
Giant. Could be a $100,000 bass right there, boys.
I mean, the only surprising thing about that whole deal is he didn't win the whole tournament. Now, there's no way there's space here to do KVD's whole bass fishing career justice, which I did in a top 5 last year anyway. But here's 3 things I want to mention. Now, one is Kevin's got to have more ADD/ADHD than any bass fisherman that came before him or maybe since, because no one fished as fast or frothed up the water with baits as much as he did. He always used to say he fished fast, slow, but Kevin, nobody really bought that, man. Now, the second deal is I asked him, in terms of tournaments, no matter how much money is involved or what body of water something's on, are you really done? He said he will fish some one-off charity or showcase tournaments here and there, but he is for sure done fishing tournaments at the tour level of pro bass fishing. Now, in my experience, Kevin is a man of his word, but he's also one of the most competitive people that ever walked the planet, so we'll see, man. Now, the last deal I want to mention is the most important one, and that's because he said he will give up all the juice.
Give me all the juice you got.
Now, I've interviewed Kevin before, during, and after tournaments for 20 plus years, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that as much as he was giving up detail-wise, he was also holding a bunch back. I asked him if he would give it all up now, and he said he would on his new TV show. Close, it's the Van Dam Experience. The show is launching on the Outdoor Channel starting next year. And if he's finally giving up all the juice, all the KVD juice, it will be a must-watch for bass fishermen everywhere. KVD's new chapter, man. Number 5. Huge congrats. What's congrats? Congrats. Huge congrats to Alabama. He's from Georgia. What? I almost said Alabama again. Huge congrats to Georgia's Paul Marks Jr. for winning one of the biggest bass fishing tournaments there is, the BFL All-American. Now, if you don't fish or follow the BFL, some of the best local and regional fishermen fish them. And you need to grind your way through that gauntlet to even get to the championship, which is the All-American. And if you win that, you've made your bones.
I made my bones when you were going out with cheerleaders.
Wait a minute, Mo.
So while I guess a lot of guys were out with their better halves last weekend, Paul was out on Cherokee Lake in Tennessee, kicking rears and taking the names of smallmouth bass. It was a tough tournament, and Paul was catching them fishing points that were in the wind or in the current, facing the wind or facing the current. He said he used Lowrance side scan to find rocks, boulders, different types of rock in about 15 feet or so, give or take, and said that he ignored all the fish he saw on sonar. He was just throwing at structure. You got that? He's in his early 20s and he didn't win using forward-facing sonar feeding the fish. He was fishing a 3.8-inch Zoom Z-Swim swim bait 2 to 3 feet above the rocks and just letting the smallies find it. Big congrats to Paul, great job, man. Now to all the forward-facing sonar haters who think that the young guys can't catch fish without it.
Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
Make like a tree, man. Just messing. That's all I got for you this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Seafoam. Go to bassblaster.com or .rocks to get all the juice from the Bass Blaster email. See you next week. God bless you.